Hi everyone, how are you? This is very loud, isn't it? Turn it down a little bit. Hi everyone, how are you? This is very loud, isn't it? Turn it down a little. Okay. Yeah, I think that should be good. Are we okay? Are we live? Let's turn this down. It's still quite loud, isn't it? Is that better? How's the sound, everybody in the chat? I think I'm all collected. Hi Simon, Steve, Jonathan, Liam, Jesse, Odin. How are you all? I'm hoping I'm live across multiple platforms right now. I should be on, I think, four, but for some reason I don't quite know why I'm not on Rockfin or Twitter. Everything I think has been done this end correctly, but obviously not. I'm not the most technical person, as people who know me will testify. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. I hope this year is going to be far improved on the last two, because they've been shocking, haven't they? I'm sure we'll talk about that. Like I say, I'm live across multiple platforms at the moment. I should be. I'm on Rumble as well. If I suggest you actually subscribe to Rumble. It doesn't cost anything, I don't think. Subscribe to my mailing list as well, because I've got a feeling that Twitter and YouTube are not going to be homes to people for very longer. We'll cover that today, I'm sure. I've got a lot I want to get through, to be honest. I don't know how long I'm going to be live for, and I don't know how many stories I'm going to cover. It could be about 6, but it's going to all sort of roll into one, hopefully, and you'll and you'll get where I'm going to. Good. I'm glad somebody's just called me Kevin Turvey in the chat. I'll take that as a compliment, mate. Yeah, I'll take it as a compliment. I'm not sure it was meant as one, but that's how I'm going to take it. So yeah, how was everybody's Christmas? I hope everybody has had a lovely time. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who sent me donations to, get all the stuff I need to get on Rumble, etc., and get these live streams going again. It's been a rough couple of years. I think as people, I told everybody to keep the money and deleted my Patreon at the beginning of this pandemic, because I could see that things were not going to that things were going to be difficult, and they sure have turned out that way, haven't they? I was going to go on live on TikTok as well, but I couldn't quite figure out how to do it all, because I'm going to have to go live from TikTok. I'd have to go live from my phone as well. So yeah, shall we get into what I want to talk about, shall we? Rather than me just natter on, because I'll make sure that everything's in order. And it is. So, Doctor, I need a sleepy Josh, says Liam. Yeah, I do. I'm doing all this on my own, mate, but we'll figure it out. This is sort of like the first one. It'll get more, obviously, professional as I go, and I get used to this software and everything. But I think I've got everything right now, levels-wise. Happy New Year to you as well, Dee. Commiserations on the Ashes. It's all right. Nobody cares about cricket in this country anymore. Right. Dr. Robert Malone, who is the pioneer. He pioneered the platform that the mRNA vaccine was invented on. has been deleted, has had his account taken away on Twitter. I'll start that again, shall I? I'll start this recording as well, because I haven't got this recording. So Dr. Robert Malone, who is the pioneer who I think invented the platform that the mRNA vaccine is built on, has had his account on Twitter deleted with over 500,000 subscribers, because he said things which could be construed as promoting vaccine hesitancy, or people might be more hesitant of taking the vaccine. I think it's fair to say that. Now, I don't like this censorship. His interview with Joe Rogan. This happened a day before he was going to go on Joe Rogan as well. He went on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's interviews with him and Dr. McCulloch as well from a couple of weeks ago were taken down by YouTube, and I assume Joe Rogan got a copyright strike for that, or a strike for that, not a copyright strike, but rather a community guideline strike, which is, well, it makes his decision to leave YouTube a good one, doesn't it? Although we all knew that at the time. This is really worrying, this censorship of doctors is. These are doctors who are professionals in their field. They deserve a voice. You can't just shut people up like this just because their opinion is different than yours. But that seems to be exactly what the agenda here is, to shut people up. I want to show people something. Not that. You probably have seen
Anybody
this
who's
already.
looking at this carefully realizes that there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science.
Do you see what I mean? They're saying you're criticising science if you criticise a person here. That is really worrying. Let me show you, listen to this clip again. Listen to what Dr. Fauci, this is the head guy in America, he said this a few weeks ago.
Anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes that there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science.
So Tony Fauci is obviously a protected species, because he's saying that you can't criticise me because you're criticising science. This is really worrying. If you go to my bio in YouTube, it actually says pro-truth, pro-science, pro-facts, I think, or something like that. Pro-science. Criticising science is how science works. This is just a clip from Wikipedia, about the scientific method. The scientific method is an empirical method of acquiring knowledge that has characterised the development of science since at least the 17th century, so for at least 400 years, with notable practitioners in previous centuries, so longer than 400 years if you take specific instances. It involves careful observation, applying rigorous skepticism about what is observed, given that cognitive assumptions can distort how one interprets the observation. It involves formulating hypotheses via induction based on such observations, experimental and measurement based testing of deductions drawn from the hypothesis. And I could carry on. Criticising science is how science is done. Having a debate about science is the scientific method. I'm very worried that they're trying to stop it here. This is this is a vaccine. This is something that's scientific. We have to look at the evidence and be able to talk about it, all of us. You can't shut people up just because they have a different opinion of you. That's not how science works. When you start doing this, when you start shutting people up who have a differing opinion, shutting experts up who expertly are looking at the data and extrapolating things from that data, when you're shutting them up, because if you're not shutting Fauci up, are they? You know, I'm not here to rag on Fauci or anything. You could go elsewhere for that. But I am here to say everything that Fauci and others have said, which is false, and you can go and find many videos of them over the last 18 months saying things that were false and turned out to be false, and up until very recently. They're still doing it. But everything that they say is false, or that has turned out to be false, goes towards promoting vaccination and wearing masks, etc. It doesn't, because it doesn't promote vaccine hesitancy, or it isn't something that could be construed as promoting vaccine hesitancy, therefore they get away with it. I can show you dozens of instances of not just Fauci, but other newsreaders, experts in America, politicians, etc., just spouting misinformation one after another on COVID, suffering no consequences whatsoever. Major news networks. Meanwhile, one doctor has a differing opinion and he's banned entirely from Twitter, from speaking to his 500,000 followers. When you start doing this, it seems very much like it's not science, what you're doing. It seems very much like it's an agenda, and science is being abused and manipulated to further this agenda's own aims. Censorship is never the answer. Ever. Especially when it comes to the scientific method. We need more conversation about this. We need more dialogue. We don't need people being shut up. Because if you start shutting people up who are saying something at an extreme, one way or the other, you're manipulating the agenda to your own aims, it seems. Let me explain something. Or try and explain that. I'm going to try and explain it. And try and explain how this is done. Rather than, give specific instances where I can have a target that we can hate. I want to, show you this. This is a YouTube video called BBC The Code, The Wisdom of the Crowd. And this is a beautiful scientific way of using multiple people, of using everyone to get the correct answer. We're going to watch it. It's 4 minutes long. I think I can get away with watching this because I'm using it, in the right context. So we're going to watch it. 4 minutes. And it's very, very good scientific way of getting the right answer.
As a crowd, the patterns we make are incredibly predictable. Even as individuals, our actions are controlled by the code. A And by untangling chaotic systems like the weather, we've uncovered evidence of the code in what we once thought of as impossibly complex.
Mathematics is a science. It's mathematics and science it's not a science, but it goes hand in hand. We can use mathematics with science in conjunction with it. And we can use it in beautiful ways.
When we look at things from a different angle, surprising patterns emerge. Patterns that can reveal defining truths about ourselves and our future. In 1906, an unfortunate cow laid down its life for a place in mathematical history.
1, 10, 264, 417.
The cow was the subject of a guess the weight competition at a village fair. The lucky person who came closest would win the slaughtered animal's meat.
1020, 2130.
The amazing thing was, nobody guessed correctly,
170.
and yet everybody got it right.
4,510.
To show you how they did it, I'm not going to use a cow, I'm going to use a jar of jelly beans.
450.
800. 12,000.
7,000.
How many jelly beans do you think there are in this jar?
80,000.
80,000.
No, actually, 50,000.
50,000?
Yeah.
Okay, 50, yeah, okay.
It's incredibly difficult for anyone to guess how many jelly beans there are. I asked 160 people, and most were way off the mark. Everything from 400 right up to 50,000 beans. In fact, only 4 people got anywhere near the correct answer of 4,510.
Plus 1,500. Plus 3,273. Plus 873,000. Plus.
But if I add all the answers together and take the average, I'll get the combined guess of the entire group.
Plus 4,500. 463. Plus 853,000. Plus 5,000. Which gives a grand total of 722,383.5. Somebody thought there was half a bean in there. Now, there are 160 guesses made, so let's see how close they are collectively. Wow, that's extraordinary. If you remember, there were 4,510. The average guess to the nearest bean is 4,515. I mean, I thought it'd be close, but I didn't think it'd be that close. That is ridiculous. So although we had guesses that were all over the place, up in 30,000s, right down in the 400s, collectively, we get something which is just 0.1% away from the real number of beans in there. So as individuals, the guesses are just that, guesses. But when you take them collectively, they become something else entirely.
And that is how the scientific method works as well. Nobody is empirically right on science. Science is something that is movable. You know, it's something that we're constantly trying to pin down, and you're constantly trying to get right, and knowing that we never really 100%, but knowing that if we use everybody, if everybody gets involved in it, if everybody checks everybody else's work and things are peer reviewed massively in science and everybody gets a voice, then we can pretty much know that we're almost exactly right. Like he said there, no one person was exactly right with the cow, but everybody got it right. Now extrapolate that out to what they're doing at the moment with Fauci and whatever you're coming out. And they can talk, they can say whatever they want, and they can be as inaccurate as they, as a human being is. Let's face it, nobody, I'm sure some of the mistakes that they've made are mistakes, genuine mistakes. But they get a voice. So they get to speak. But people on the fringes, they don't get to speak. What happens, what you're going to get is, instead of, going in the right direction, you're going to limit the scope of debate. And when you start doing that, you start getting a slanted view of things. Just look at the news. Look at the political compass. This guy, they had guesses, just 160 guesses in that jar he's got there. Just 160 people. And they guessed anywhere between 400 and 50,000. What if he would have taken out 10% on the upper end? If they would have said, right now, you 10%, that lady there who said 50,000. If you're nuts, you don't get to speak. If you take out those people at the top end, you're going to be further and further out. Instead of being 5 out, if you take out a guess of 50,000 and 10,000 and 15,000 and 20,000, all of a sudden you're 50, you're 60 out. You need everybody to get the right answer. That's how science works. The same could be said if you take out the bottom 15% of people's guesses. The 400. Well, there's clearly more than 400 jelly beans in there. What is she talking about? And if you do it at both ends, which they are, you can pretty much manipulate the science into saying whatever the hell you want and getting whatever data results that you want, especially if anybody who says anything that you consider or that big pharma or corporations considers would promote people, maybe I shouldn't promote vaccine hesitancy. You're going to manipulate science to say whatever the hell you want. This is why you don't censor people. Now, I know that was with jelly beans, but it's pretty much the same principle. This is why I've always been against censorship, and I just think anybody, especially anybody who, I don't like looking at things through the left and right spectrum anymore, but if you're perceived as being on the left and you're pro-censorship, then I've got to ask, what the hell is the matter with you? Because it's always going to come back on you. Eventually it's going to be you that are saying something wrong, because remember, it's meant to be anti-establishment where you are. This is corporations that are doing this. Corporations and media that are doing it. And you've got to ask, why are they doing it? Why are they so focusing on, the vaccine and not health? Censorship is never the answer, especially if your goal is to seek the truth. If your goal is money, however, then, and profits, censorship can do a lot there. I'm going to be talking about that in a bit. I'm going to come and say hello to people in the chat because I can see there. Hi Ross, thank you mate. I can see what you said there. So I really appreciate all the support, guys. I'm going to need it. I'm going to need it in the coming year. I know I am. The Rogan interview is one bombshell after another, says Ludwig Holwein, a brilliant scientist, unlike this. Unlike Fauci. Censorship is not the answer. It just isn't. I haven't seen that. I haven't even seen the podcast yet. I've seen the other one with Dr. McCulloch. But I mean, whatever he said in there, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be censoring him. I've just proved I've just basically shown you, if you take out the top 10% or top 15% or left or right, whatever it is, you can manipulate the figures to get whatever you want. Basically manipulate things to, if you take out certain guesses, you can pretty much get that, well, your average to, say, 2,000 instead of 4,000 in that jar. And they're doing it live in front of us. Not live on Rockfin, but I followed anyway, says Chris. I don't know why I'm not live on Rockfin. I shall have to ask them. I have set it up, and it says I'm live here on my restream, so maybe I haven't done it properly. But I will be live on Rockfin in future. Like I say, I'm still live on YouTube at the moment. I can see that they haven't taken my stream down yet. It's coming. It's coming. If they're cancelling doctors, they'll cancel me like that. You know, I won't think twice. You know, if we need to seek out different platforms. It's not pretty much the same. It is the same, says Craig Durst. Okay, all right. It's the same. Thank you, Nikki. It's really good to see you around, Nikki. Hi, everyone. Hi, Craig. All right. I need to get to the next one because ties in nicely. This does. Like I said in the segment I've just done, censorship is never the answer, unless your goal. I'll start that again. Censorship is never the answer. Not if your goal is to seek truth. If your goal is profit, though, then hey, censorship can be a pretty useful tool. Do you know how much these vaccine companies are making? You know how much they've made during this pandemic? It's mind-boggling. Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna are making $1,000 profit every second, while the world's poorest countries remain largely unvaccinated. Damn. A second. New figures from the People's Vaccine Alliance reveal that the companies behind two of the most successful COVID-19 vaccines, Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna, are making combined profits of $65,000 every minute. The figures, based on the latest company reports, are released as CEOs from pharmaceutical industry meet for the annual Stats Summit, the equivalent of Big Pharma's Davos. Now, this is back in November. I think this was a report that came out in Oxfam, beginning of November. It's going to be more now, isn't it? These companies have sold the majority of doses to rich countries, leaving low-income countries out in the cold. Pfizer and BioNTech have delivered less than 1% of their total vaccine supplies to low-income countries. Meanwhile, we're on what? We're on talking about number 4 dose now. Other countries are talking about number 5 dose. Pfizer and BioNTech have delivered less than 1%. I've just said that. While Moderna has delivered just 0.2%. Meanwhile, 98% of people in low-income countries have not been fully vaccinated. 98% of people in low-income countries have not been fully vaccinated. 98%. This is a global pandemic. It's not just a pandemic in the UK and US and Germany and France. Maza Sayoum of the African Alliance and People's Vaccine Alliance Africa said, "It is obscene that just a few companies are making millions of dollars in profits every single hour, while just 2% of people in low-income countries have been fully vaccinated against the coronavirus. Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna have used their monopolies to privatize the most profitable contracts with the richest governments, leaving low-income countries out in the cold." Despite receiving public funding of over $8 billion, the three corporations have refused calls. Remember, the $8 billion these three companies got in public funding, public money, have refused calls to urgently transfer vaccine technology and know-how with capable producers in low and middle income countries via the World Health Organization. A move that could increase global supply, drive down prices, and save millions of lives. In Moderna's case, this is despite explicit pressure from the White House and requests from the World Health Organization that the company collaborate in and help accelerate its plan to replicate the Moderna vaccine for wider production at its mRNA hub in South Africa. Like I say, this was November. Maybe, While Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, described the call to share vaccine recipes dangerous nonsense, the World Health Organization emergency use approval of the Indian vaccine Covaxin earlier this month is clear evidence that developing countries have the capacity and expertise. Based on company financial statements, it goes on to say the alliance estimates that Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna will make pre-tax profits of $34 billion this year between them, which works out as over $1,000 a second, $65,000 a minute, or $93.5 million a day. My God, that's almost as much as Adele makes in royalties. The monopolies these companies hold have produced 5 new billionaires during the pandemic, which combined net wealth of $35.1 billion. The People's Vaccine Alliance, which has 80 members, including the African Alliance, Global Justice Now, Oxfam and UNAIDS, is calling for the pharmaceutical corporations to immediately suspend intellectual property rights for COVID-19 vaccines, tests, treatments and other medical tools by agreeing the proposed waiver of the TRIPS agreement at the World Trade Organization. So you can see here, what I'm basically trying to say to you is, right, okay, they're making a fortune, these vaccine companies are. They're making $1,000 a second is incredible. And if they're gonna keep have to bring these vaccines out, it's going to be fantastic, right? Meanwhile, low income countries, well, they don't get the vaccine as much, do they? In fact, according to this article in The Independent, the COVID jab is one of the most expensive vaccines in history. For them, it's one of the most expensive vaccines in history for poorer countries. Raising further the concern that those most in need will continue to struggle to access the life-saving vaccines in the coming year. Despite international promises that the vaccines would be made available at the cheapest prices to lower income countries, these nations are paying well above the expected cost. But here, in this article, they're making out like bandits. Okay. We'll carry on. We'll go back to this original article. They were also calling on governments, including the United States, to use all their legal and policy tools to demand that pharmaceutical companies share the COVID-19 data, know-how and technology with the World Health Organization's COVID-19 Technology Access Pool and South Africa mRNA Technology Transfer Hub. More than 100 nations, led by South Africa and India, with the support of the US, have been calling for the TRIPS waiver, which is also support for over 100 past and present world leaders and Nobel laureates. So they're all saying, come on, sign this waiver. Teach us how to do this vaccine so we can vaccinate ourselves. Just want to concentrate on this last bit at the bottom. Because they make a point, Oxfam made a point of saying this. and that conglomerate of companies that places that put this out. A People's Vaccine Alliance report from the 21st of October, so this is going back 3 or 4 months ago, found that Moderna had only delivered 0.2% of their total vaccine supply to low-income countries, and Pfizer-BioNTech has delivered less than 1%. Pfizer forecast $36 billion in vaccine revenue for 2021. I mentioned Adele, that's bigger than the entire recording industry. Gross profit from the revenue is split 50-50 with BioNTech. Pfizer guidance for their income before tax is high 20s as percentage of revenues. 20s. A conservative 25% margin would bring Pfizer's profit before tax to $9 billion in 2021 from the COVID-19 vaccine. It's incredible the amount of money these vaccine manufacturers are making, while at the same time making it's extremely expensive in poorer countries like in Africa, who have only got a 2% vaccination rate. So these Pfizer-BioNTech, just to clarify, Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna are making $1,000 a second, whilst at the same time saying, no, you can't have in South Africa, where the Omicron, they're saying, originated from, by the way, they're saying to them, no, you can't have the source, you know, you can't have the Colonel Sanders recipe on how to do this, because, you know, why? I mean, I've heard some arguments. I think it was Bill Gates who was saying, "Oh well, you know, they've got infrastructure and it has to be kept at the right temperature." What? So you can't teach anybody to do that? How are we going to get there? Could go by road. Could send a truck. I'll carry on with this because I really want to make a point of this. They're making a fortune. This is in The Independent. The COVID jab is one of the most expensive vaccines in history for poorer countries, analysis shows, raising further the concern that these most in need will continue to struggle the access to life-saving vaccines in the coming year. Basically, they're making it so, well, they can't buy it, these poorer countries, because it's the most expensive vaccine ever for them. Meanwhile, how many hundreds of millions have we bought? Hundreds of millions of doses. I'll carry on talking. I'll carry on reading this. Despite international promises that the vaccines would be made available at the cheapest prices to lower income countries, these nations are paying well above the expected cost. So it's like, don't worry, we're not going to give you the secret sauce to how they're made, but we're going to make it really cheap for you. And then making them pay more than everybody else in the world. World Health Organization data analysed by The Independent shows that governments of lower income countries are paying a median price of $6 per dose. Before the pandemic, developing countries paid a median price of 80 cents for non-COVID jabs. 8 billion of public money went into funding it. The price is high relative to the other vaccines used worldwide and in large quantities, said Tanya Chinuski, team leader for the World Health Organization's Global Access, Immunization, Vaccines and Biologicals Department. She said comparisons could be drawn with the HPV and pneumonia vaccines. World Health Organization figures show that low-income countries pay about $4.50 for those and $3 for those two vaccines, both of which, like the COVID jabs, are relatively expensive and used in all countries. But the COVID jab's twice the price for them. Cheaper universal vaccines, such as those that protect against tuberculosis or against measles, mumps and rubella, cost between 11 cents and $2.85 a dose. But how much they? $6.88 for the countries in Africa and poorer countries. A World Health Organization source said the COVID vaccine is one of the most expensive vaccines in history for poorer countries. Victoria Miliano, a UK policy advisor for global health NGO Medicines Sans Frontiers, which is Medicines Without Borders, that is. It's sort of like Reporters Without Borders. Said the figures were, quote, further evidence that the current pandemic response is failing people in low-income countries. Pharmaceutical companies are more interested in making profits than improving public health, she added. It is deplorable that in a pandemic companies are charging historically high prices, especially given the public funding that went in to these vaccines. So, to recap, so far, they're making these pharmaceutical manufacturers, these three, are making $1,000 a second off these jabs, selling them all at knockdown prices to richer countries like us that can buy them in their millions and hundreds of millions, which in turn means the poorer countries in Africa can't get the vaccines because A, they're too expensive, and B, these three pharmaceutical companies are saying, no, you can't have the secret sauce to how it's made because it's too complicated for you. It's excuses is what it is. The UK, this is international, the UK, the EU and the US got more COVID vaccine in 6 weeks than Africa did all year. According to analysis from the People's Vaccine Alliance. The Amnesty International-backed organisation, which is made up of an array of not-for-profits, including Human Rights Watch and Oxfam, says that despite making billions in profit, Pfizer and Moderna continue to refuse to share the new generation of vaccine technology with poorer countries. Between the 11th of November and the 21st of December, the EU, UK and US received 513 million doses of vaccines in just that 6 weeks, while countries in Africa received just 500 million for the whole year. We're not racist though. If the current rates of vaccination continue by next Christmas, manufacturers will still be failing to fully vaccinate everyone in Africa. They could just give them the recipe and the technology and the power to store it and the right way to send some, medical people over there to set it up, to vaccinate, the planet. Vaccine equity campaigners say that governments like the UK risk, quote, trapping the world in an endless cycle of variants, boosters, restrictions and even lockdowns if low vaccination rates are allowed to persist in the global south. Ooh, really? So you make a fortune every second. You make it so countries in Africa, poorer countries, can't buy it because it's too expensive, and you don't want to give it them because, they haven't got the knowledge and, energy and these stupid people in Africa. How they're meant to know what temperature to keep these vaccines, Meanwhile, where are all these, where's these mutations coming from? I mean, that one, the latest one came from South Africa, they said, right? Well, I've just shown you. See, they wouldn't send it South Africa. They wouldn't work in conjunction with them. It's a pretty sweet deal, isn't it, when you think about it? And if you think about that logically, what's happening here? Well, they're making a fortune They're making it so Africa can't afford it. They're not giving them the vaccine, making it almost inevitable that we're going to get mutations forever. Basically, like, it's almost like they've got... If you imagine Africa, they've turned it into a giant petri dish, really, for future variants. And then said, don't worry, our vaccine will work on it, but you can't have that, you can't afford it, and we're not going to give it you because you're stupid. You won't know what temperature to keep it at. And this is basically assuring that it's going to carry on forever. I've just shown you they won't even get through Africa at the current rate in a year. It's good business if you can get it, isn't it? The PVA's push for Moderna and Pfizer to share their vaccine recipes has received support from former and current global leaders, including Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. So, if low and middle income countries continue to be prevented from manufacturing vaccines themselves, new variants of the coronavirus will continue to emerge and spread across the global community, keeping that $1,000 a minute profit right there. You know? So it's going to keep that profit right there. Make sure that, we're going to make a fortune in 2022 and forever. If low and middle income countries will continue to be prevented from manufacturing vaccines themselves, new variants of the coronavirus will continue to emerge and spread across the global community. Feel like I should have, needs to be said twice. Just 8.6% of people in Africa have been fully vaccinated to date. Just 8.6%. I mean, that article I think I showed was from November, they were saying. It's going to take... Well, you're never going to vaccinate them, are you? It will not be until April 2023 that everyone will receive their first dose at current rates. How many variants do you think we're going to have? I mean, how many have we had so far? How many do you think we'll have by then? How many do you think they'll find by then? It is feared manufacturers will still be failing to fully vaccinate everyone in Africa by next Christmas. G7 countries will have 1.4 billion surplus doses by March 2022. 1.4 billion! Even after giving all adults a booster, but are failing, even after giving all adults a booster, but are failing to deliver on donation pledges. The US has delivered just a quarter of the vaccines it promised to donate, while the UK and Germany have delivered just 15 and 14%. It makes no sense, this does it? If you think, I mean, you want to vaccinate the planet, don't you? To get out the pandemic. If the vaccine, if that's what's needed, you want to vaccinate everybody to make sure that the variations. Okay? So let's go along with what you're saying, and we need to vaccinate everybody. Why are you so slow in sending the donations to other countries then when you've got 1.4 billion surplus doses in reserve? Why is that? Why are you holding back on that percentage that you promised to give them? Why don't you just give them the vaccine? Why don't you just teach them how to make it themselves? Show them how to store it. Can't do that. Cut into our bottom line. Health policy manager at Oxfam and PVA, Anna Marriott, said that blocking vaccine access in former countries is, quote, prolonging the pandemic and all its suffering for every one of us. She added, rich countries are banking on boosters to keep them safe from Omicron and future variants of COVID-19, but boosters can never be more than a temporary and inadequate firewall. All right. Extinguishing the threat of variants and ending this pandemic requires vaccinating the world. And that means sharing vaccine recipes and letting the developing countries manufacture jabs for themselves. Exactly. So when they keep saying we've got to vaccinate the world to get us out of this, which is what they keep saying over and over, why aren't they doing it? Well, got to be careful what I say, but I mean, if you're making $1,000 a second, well, I mean, there's $65,000. There's $60,000 every 60,000 reasons every single hour I could come up with not doing that, or they could. The new analysis comes after the World Health Organization chief Tedros Adhanom, word I can't pronounce, commented that, quote, no country could booster its way out of the pandemic. But that's all we're hearing, isn't it? Booster, get your booster. Get your booster. But the World Health Organization chief is saying no country could booster its way out of the pandemic. The WHO Director General said on Wednesday blanket booster programs are likely to prolong the COVID-19 pandemic rather than ending it. What? Huh? But all I keep hearing, or everybody hears on the TV, is booster. That's how we're going to get through it. No, he's saying blanket booster programs. The Director General of the WHO, that's not me, by the way, that's the Director General of the WHO, said that blanket booster programs are likely to prolong the COVID-19 pandemic rather than ending it by diverting supply to countries that already have high levels of vaccination coverage, giving the virus more opportunity to spread and mutate. World Health Organization scientists are now attempting to reverse engineer Moderna's US taxpayer-funded vaccine. They're trying to reverse the US taxpayer-funded vaccine, Moderna, instead of the US taxpayer-funded vaccine being given to the rest of the world, because the WHO scientists, instead of giving them to the WHO so we can get out of this, the scientists are having to reverse engineer it and try and, it's like trying to take it. It's like taking a KFC chicken apart and saying, right, okay, we'll run that through a spectrometer, see how much cayenne pepper's in there. A process that will be 2 years shorter if the company shared its jab recipe. That's a lot of. What's $1,000 a second times 2 years? Human Rights Watch and Medicines Without Frontiers identified over 100 manufacturers that could produce mRNA vaccines if intellectual property barriers were removed and pharmaceutical companies transferred the technology and knowledge required. But they won't be doing that anytime soon. What do you think? I've got very low expectations that they're going to be doing that. I mean, would you? You've got a massive cash cow there. Worrying, isn't it? Just bear me a second, my dog wants me. What do you want? What? Go lie down. Go on. What the fuck, Gordon, do you adore these jabs? They do not promote health or survival. How did that be your comment, J.O. Towner, from what I've just said? How did you extrapolate that? I'm reading words other people have written. I'm showing evidence of these. I don't get that. J.O. Towner, look at the research in South Africa, lowest hospitalisation rates. Do you think I don't know that? This really annoys me, J.O. Towner, because now you're starting to get annoyed, and so I can see somebody else in the chat, you're starting to get annoyed at things I haven't said. And because I haven't said things exactly in lockstep with you, well, I mean, there's somebody there saying I've got 2 brain cells. Stop this nonsense. Vaccine believer. You know what, mate? I can have people disagreeing with me. All right, I really can. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. In fact, I encourage it. I really do. But let's have a goddamn conversation, shall we? Let's stop throwing abuse at each other. You people right there, him, that flying fishnet, I shouldn't talk to people like this. I really shouldn't. There's probably a million nice comments in that chat, but I've seen something that... Why can't you talk to me? Why is it when people call you names, you don't like it, but it's all right for you to do me if I have a differing opinion? And actually, if we were to sit down and have a conversation, you would find that we probably agree with 98% of everything to do with this over the last 2 years. So why are you having a go at me? Let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's not throw crap at each other, saying I'm stupid and I've got 2 brain cells, etc., etc. Why are you doing that? You're just going to get blocked. Let's have a conversation. Let's not throw crap at each other. I am not your enemy. I'm not. Why are you treating me like it? If you have something to say, put it in an email and send it to me. I will read it. If it's good, I'll respond. We have to come together here. We do. People who don't agree with everything that the other person... It's insane. I don't agree with everything my missus says. And I love her to bits. But when she says something I disagree with, I don't immediately start saying she's got 2 brain cells and stupid. It's incredible. It really is. I'm as honest as the day is long when it comes to this. And people like that, they're like, ah! Why are you tapping away on your keyboard like, I hate you! My love's so... Spending all your time on YouTube, tapping away, calling people who are trying to get to the truth of things, idiots. Just bear with me a second, I've got somebody at the door. I'll be back with you in about 2 minutes, people. I've just got to sort this out. Be with you in a second. Etic Boxon. Gordon is safe from the YouTube police. He's providing more vax, just like Pfizer wants him to. What I'm doing is the news, mate. I'm not promoting anything. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Patty Brannigan, Gordon, calm down. Some people just have to be like that. It's just so annoying. It's like the first comment I went to, it's just somebody. Why? Why are you saying? I just really don't get it. I really don't get why people want to be negative towards people who are trying to get to the truth. That's all it is. But you know everything, don't you, mate? You people that you know everything. Yeah? So if you guys know everything and you know everything about everything, why don't you set up your own channel and do what I'm doing? Rather than coming and saying you hate me. And two sides need to start talking to each other, mate. We need to start talking. This whole stream, I've been live for an hour now, and for an hour I've been talking about getting everybody together and coming together. Because you, the people in the chat saying that I've got 2 brain cells, and you saying I'm safe because I'm promoting the vaccines, etc. I'm not your enemy. And you're not mine. So I'm not going to throw any insults at you. I want us to all come together. The whole point of this live stream is to be us, to all come together. And yes, even people who have got a radically different opinion than you. This is how the world works. I've just shown you how it works in mathematics. I've just shown you how it works with that. We sat down and we watched the video together of how us all coming together, radically different views, from a guess of 400 to a guess of, what was it, 70,000, 50,000, we got the right answer. If you've got something that, a piece of information that I need to be able to, change my viewpoint on something, then great, send it to me. I've just given you 4 articles based on empirical research from scientists and what have you, and data from scientists on how, did you watch? I hope you did. I really do. We need to come together. You're not my enemy. I'm not your enemy. People who have a different opinion to you are not your enemy. Do you know who's your enemy? The people making $1,000 a minute. A second. Because they're not in any rush to end this, are they? Because if they were, well, Africa would be manufacturing its own vaccines, wouldn't it? Hey everybody. Hey Oz Whistles, good to see you again, man. How you doing? All right. Unbelievable, really incredible. I'm so sorry about that. It's just I looked over to my left where all the chat was, and there was, I think, 3 or 4 just in a block of people who were like, oh, he's an idiot, he's got 2 brain cells. What? I'm not. You subscribe to me. You know I'm not an idiot. You subscribe to the channel and you're watching me. If I was an idiot, you wouldn't be. You're not watching TYT, are you? You know? Just see, Didn't expect that to go on for as long, actually. I do want to talk about this, so let's talk about it. Because this is something you're going to love. I'm sure you are. This is something you're going to love. I'm sure you are, because I love it. Well, Joe Rogan has completely destroyed the legacy media. This is incredible. These figures are incredible. They really are. So, this is the Q3 2021 media ratings. The sources are Nielsen, Spotify, or Nielsen ratings. To the look at that. Compared to the news media, let me just take my CNN 0.82, MSNBC 1.27. That's their prime time average. It doesn't say whether this is in millions or not, but I'm assuming that it is. 11 million would, well, yeah, 11 million would be about right for per episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. It was about 6 or 7 on YouTube, wasn't it? So it'd be about that. He's absolutely destroying them. Gee, you know, I can't imagine why CNN and the media hate Joe Rogan. Can you? I can't imagine why CNN, down here look, would be saying that Joe Rogan was taking horse paste for COVID. I can't imagine what, when they were lying about that. Ivermectin isn't horse paste. Antibiotics. Lots of human antibiotics are used mostly in cows and cattle. But, you know, when I have a tooth infection, I'm not taking cow medicine, am I? But that's the way CNN framed that argument. He wasn't taking horse paste, he was taking a combination of drugs that he was prescribed by his doctor to fight something that he got over within 2 or 3, 4 days. He was very healthy. I can't imagine why they were all attacking him. Can you? These shows that are sponsored by Pfizer. I absolutely love this, because the reason I love it the most, though, is because there's one reason I think that Joe Rogan is obliterating them with these figures. Trust. They trust him. They trust that he's not going to be right 100% on what he talks about. He's not. But they trust that when he's presented with new information, he will change his opinion based upon that. They trust him. They know that he's not going to be lying to people and giving them false information to service some hidden agenda, which is exactly what you're going to get, who am I, with all those. Let's face it, we know that these giant corporations, these giant media organisations have hidden agendas, and we know that they've been lying to people for a very long time. It's one of the reasons why I was always against calling people anti-vaxxers and pointing the finger. You know, they might have been right, I said at the time. But it's trust. These shows are not trusted. It's podcasts. And people like Joe Rogan who are. It's going to be the future. And of course, this is why he's smeared and attacked by people in the media like this as well. Whenever they write a story about him, it gets lots of clicks. He's popular. It's the only way they can sell their advertisements. Podcasts are killing the legacy media. And I, for one, can't be happier. I really can't. And long may this continue. The same can be said for people like the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, The Guardian, The Times, etc. They're done. They're finished. They've been lying to people for too long. The genie's out the bottle. Podcasts of the future. And I will have plenty more podcasts in the coming year. Everybody. I'm looking forward to it. Got some good people on my agenda to talk about. See, now that person who was saying that I was, now they've seen that segment I just did, maybe they're not thinking that I'm a propagandist so much. Joe Rogan is possibly one of the best interviewers I have ever seen, says Patty Brannigan. Me too, Patty, and I got to be honest, I learnt a lot from him by watching his interview technique. I learnt a lot just from sitting. There's a technique that's excellent that I use. I'll give it away a secret now. But for long time followers of mine, I've got better at my podcasts. And I think one of the reasons is I don't interrupt people as much, I think. And if something's on my mind or there's a question or something interests me, I'll write it down and come back to it after the other person's speaking. But I put my tongue behind my teeth, my 2-foot teeth at the front. And imagine that it's a trick that Gary taught me. Gary Jones. For anybody who's struggled with depression, I recommend that. It's a trick that he taught to imagine that there's like a capsule behind your 2 front teeth and you put your tongue there and hold the capsule in place, and if you push too hard, you'll burst it. So it's imaginary thing. But if you're concentrating on that, you obviously can't talk because you've got your tongue on your teeth, and also it makes you listen intently. And that's something that I learned, Gary taught me it, but it's something that I knew I had to do because Joe Rogan, as you say, Patty, he's one of the best interviewers I've ever witnessed. He's just so good. And it all comes from, I think, a curious, almost childlike place. I think it's why people gravitate to him so much. There's somebody, Ben Jokes has just said Joe Rogan has lied over and over and over again about veganism. I've never heard that. I've heard him say some stuff about veganism that maybe is controversial, but I haven't heard him lie about it. Another worldview is possible, says, I still love you, Gordon. He's about to say something bad, isn't he? But I think you might look a bit more at the vaccine injury aware population and the information that pushes them away from those who parrot the WF Gavi CIA MS6 line. I was talking. I was going to set up a podcast in between Christmas and New Year, but I eventually went on Slow News Day. It was on the 28th or something like that of December. I'm glad I did now, because as soon as I went live, my computer just exploded and I missed like the first hour. If I'd have gone live, doing a live show like I'd planned, it would have been terrible. But on that stream, I was talking about vaccine injuries with Steve, and I was talking about how there's one study I know about women who have had their menstrual cycles messed about with. Got to be careful what I'm saying because I am on YouTube. I'm aware of it, mate. I am. Don't assume I haven't got a piece of information. I might not have it, but don't assume it. And don't assume that I'm taking a position that I'm not. I've never called anybody stupid for taking a vaccine. In fact, anybody who didn't want to take the vaccine, I said you can hardly blame them with the amount of lies that we've been told over the last few years. And I've documented them. I personally did something. And you know what? If I could have my time over again, So we really do need to. I appreciate you saying, love you, but blah 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 blah. And that's better than the hate that I was concentrating on that somebody was doing earlier, and the insults. But we need to talk about this, and I will take what you've said on board there, and I will look more into it. Promise I will. I'm just trying to find the truth. That's all. And everybody, it seems I come across over the last 2 years, thinks they know it. I don't. That's why I'm trying to find it. And I'm trying to find it in an honest way, and so you can see the journey I'm going on doing it as well. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing the podcasts as well. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the live shows as well this year again. Because I love this. I love talking to you people, and I love having this interaction. I realised how much I'd missed it when I started going live on TikTok at the end of last year. And that's something. But it's one of the reasons why I'm doing the live shows. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing the podcasts as well, so I can talk to people at length. And also why I'm doing the TikTok videos, the short 3-minute videos on TikTok as well. If you're not on TikTok, download the app and follow me. I'm dropping probably 10 to 15 videos a week, and some cases. I'm just trying to find the truth. That's all it really is. If I think something's true, I'll let you know and my reasons why. But yeah, don't think I'm automatically I'm not aware of vaccine injuries, etc. Because I just haven't had the confirmation yet. But if you've got it, please send it me. I know there are studies being done. It's always worrying, isn't it, when studies are being done, because you never know who's funding them or where they do. I just want to check something because. We're expecting a verdict, aren't we? Because you probably noticed this. 30th of December, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty of helping Jeffrey Epstein abuse girls. So that's all finished now. I shouldn't laugh because there's abuse here, but that's all finished now. That's all done. That's all going to be. We'll hear. Well, we don't need to hear anything more, do we? But there's we're waiting to hear word from America, because there is a court case today on Prince Andrew in America. And I've just seen a brilliant tweet on it from Boris Johnson's parody, who says, in order to clear his name, Prince Andrew's brilliant defence is that he definitely was one of the pedo chums that Jeffrey Epstein referred to in his settlement with Virginia Giuffre. So what Prince Andrew is trying to do with, I explained it, I think on another video, Virginia Giuffre had a settlement with Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 of $500,000. Let me go to Twitter, because I'll be able to explain it better with in the background. Oh, I am live on Twitter as well. Brilliant. So, to give you the background, Virginia Giuffre, who was Prince Andrew's accuser, got a payout from Jeffrey Epstein for the abuse that she said that he did to her. And she got a payout of, I think it was $500,000. And in the settlement, Prince Andrew, or his lawyers, are arguing that her settlement with Epstein in 2009 releases Prince Andrew from and releases him from any crimes that he might have committed. So yeah, in order to clear his name, Prince Andrew's brilliant defence is that he definitely was one of oh, this is a good thread though. This is by Lisa Bloom, who's a human rights lawyer. I think he is, and she explains why she thinks, in her opinion, it's wrong, because in the settlement agreement, it includes, in her opinion, truly unusual and bizarre language that she would never allow in a settlement agreement. The claims against, quote, any other person or entity who could have been included as a potential defendant is also released. So, as part of the settlement that Jeffrey Epstein had with Virginia Giuffre, Prince Andrew is arguing that, or his lawyers are arguing, that that settlement includes anybody who may have been included as a potential defender. So anybody. Basically, doesn't really matter, does it, who they are? It's just if it absolves anybody who Virginia Giuffre may say did something to her. Weird language, isn't it? Contracts must be clear and specific. This is incomprehensibly vague, really vague. Virginia can never sue others who wronged her because she settled with Epstein. This makes no sense and flies in the face of New York law, which grants sexual abuse survivors more time to sue. Why? Because we want perpetrators to be brought to justice. Dismissing Virginia's case against Prince Andrew would undermine that. Also, contracts are strictly construed against the drafter. I'm sure that Epstein's fleet of lawyers drafted her settlement agreement, of course. Ambiguities are construed in her favour. She just can't get over how she that she releases any other person from absolves any other person. We haven't got, it doesn't look like, the answer on that. But today, this is what Prince Andrew's lawyers are arguing in court. They're saying that the case against Prince Andrew, the civil case against Prince Andrew, should be dropped. Well, they've already tried to say because she lives in Australia, whilst jailing and torturing an Australian journalist in our prison for no crime whatsoever. I digress, but I find it really ambiguous. Like I say, the ambiguities and the language there is really strange. That claims against, quote, any other person or entity who could have been included as a potential defendant. So what Prince Andrew's lawyers are saying there, because he could be construed as a potential defendant, then that deal means she can't sue him. So Virginia, it essentially, as you could argue, that deal that she did with Epstein back in 2009, when he paid her that money, basically said, yeah, if anybody to do with me did anything towards you, you can't sue them. That's what they're arguing in court today. I was hoping that there was going to be an answer, a verdict on that by the end of this live stream, but it doesn't look like it. Oh well. It is worrying though, isn't it? Take it back to this. Isn't it worrying that Ghislaine Maxwell, who procured all manner of, I mean, there are 4 accusers, but there's hundreds, there's probably thousands of victims here, procured just young girls for Jeffrey Epstein and his friends, and his very powerful friends, his very powerful male friends, to sexually abuse, allegedly, I have to put that in there, I suppose, So all of those men, all of those powerful men, many hundreds of them maybe, they all abused girls, young girls and women by the look of it. And as a result of all those men raping all those women, the only woman who has been found, the only person who's been found guilty in a court of law of it is a woman who procured those girls for those men. The men, so far, well, apart from Jeffrey Epstein, we're going to need to change that. Abusers are going to have to start seeing the inside of a court. Don't you agree? Some of the men that she procured these girls for, who actually did these despicable, awful things. Don't you think some of them should see the inside of a court, and not just the woman who found those girls for them? Don't you think that's a little bit unfair? Don't get me wrong, I am not defending Ghislaine Maxwell here before anybody in the chat says that. I am not. I'm in the upside down, I think. Isn't that settlement void since Epstein's death, says Nikki? I don't know. They're, like I say, they're arguing it in court today. So, it's, yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out whether... I'm honestly, I'm fully expecting them to just drop the whole thing and say, right, okay, that's it now. Ghislaine Maxwell's gone to prison. Let's tie it all up in a nice little bow. Prince Andrew can't get sued. Nobody else can get sued. None of these powerful people can get sued, because if you think about it, if you look at the wording, any other person or entity who could have been included as a potential defendant, if Prince Andrew gets the case thrown out based on that, yeah, then any case brought against anybody would get thrown out, wouldn't it? Well, I mean, I suppose that's Virginia Giuffre. Doesn't stop any other person, but honestly, it looks like they've got it tied up in a nice little bow. And no man who actually did any of these awful things is going to see the inside of a court. Virginia can never sue anybody else who wronged her because she settled with Epstein. That's what Prince Andrew's lawyers are arguing in court. Prince Andrew is arguing, or his lawyers are arguing in court, that she can't sue a co-conspirator of Epstein because she's already signed an agreement to say that she won't. Or what she alleges to be a co-conspirator of Epstein. All I know about all this is it's disgusting and it's unfair, because I keep showing figures over and over of how little rapes are solved in this country. 1 in 70, I think the figures are. I mean, how many rapes happen there? With all that Epstein and Maxwell, and let's remember Anthony Acosta, the lawyer involved in Epstein's sweetheart deal, said, quote, he belongs to intelligence, and that's the reason why he got an easy ride. So what are intelligence companies, what are intelligence services doing with that information? It's a strange time, isn't it? I mean, we live in an era where saying the obvious has become almost, you can't say the obvious because you'll be silenced. I mean, how can Western countries who are doing that look down their nose at countries like China or Russia for anything they are doing? Tomorrow, I don't know whether you're aware of this, will be 1,000 days that Julian Assange has spent behind bars in Belmarsh prison. 1,000 days. What moral standing can we have in the world while we're doing that to a journalist because he proved that war criminals were war criminals and told the truth about them? I'm going to end on this. It's a video from, it's actually the South China Morning Post, and it's sort of an end of year monologue from one of their journalists there, and I'm just going to let it play for you because this, well, it is 4 minutes long and it ends with a brilliant sentence and just shows how, well, I mean, let's stop acting like our shit doesn't stink, shall we?
As a working journalist, am I concerned about what's happening to press freedom in Hong Kong? Absolutely. But am I going to be lectured on it by plaster saints like the US and its cronies? Absolutely not. Let me tell you why. Imagine if a Chinese journalist blows the lid on a plethora of present-day war crimes and crimes against humanity perpetrated by China. And imagine if this journalist breaks the news from another country but is about to be extradited to China to be imprisoned for the rest of his life or worse. The whole world would self-combust in collective outrage. Well, there is no such Chinese journalist. There is, however, a giant of an Australian journalist in such a predicament, and the villain of the piece is the United States, not China. I'm talking about Julian Assange. And even as I speak, he continues to be victimized, vilified, and crucified in a slow execution right before our eyes.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if China, let's say a journalist, let's say a Chinese journalist, no, let's say Julian Assange, an Australian journalist, comes to the UK to work with The Guardian, The New York Times, and The Washington Post because he had documents that were leaked to him that proved China were committing war crimes all over in Afghanistan and elsewhere in the world. Do you think he would be in Belmarsh prison? Do you think we'd throw him in Belmarsh prison if China said, well, he's broken our laws, send him over us. Send him over to us, he's broken our laws. He's broken our national security laws. What do you think we would say to China if China said that? What do you think the UK, the almighty Great Britain would say to China if China said, no, you've got to send that Australian citizen to us because he broken our laws on national security, because he told the truth about our crimes? What do you think we would say? How loudly do you think the laughter in the House of Commons would be if China demanded we extradite that man to certain death, let's face it, which it would be? I don't know. I think I'd probably trust that more than America at the moment. Can you see how hypocritical this all is? Julian Assange would be given all of the awards if he proved China were war criminals and were committing war crimes elsewhere in the world. He'd be given Pulitzer after Pulitzer after Pulitzer. Nobel Peace Prize, sure, they'd be thrown at him. They might even take the knighthood away from Tony Blair and give it Julian Assange if he did that. But it's America.
What did he do to deserve it? He told the truth. He dared to be the ultimate journalist, exposing American war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, the slaughter of civilians, the killing of journalists, the torture of prisoners at Guantanamo, and Washington's secret war on Yemen, where mass murder still continues under the auspices of the White House. Fun fact, all of these are undeniable crimes secretly documented by the US government itself. They were just not meant to be exposed by Assange. The US was so embarrassed and so hell-bent on vengeance that it orchestrated a global campaign to destroy him with the complicity of vassal states like Britain and Australia. Assange took refuge at Ecuador's embassy in London for 7 years before British police dragged him out and threw him into a maximum security prison that houses terrorists, murderers and rapists. Nearly 3 years later, after a sham trial in a kangaroo court, with the flimsy case against Assange thoroughly discredited, Britain's much-vaunted justice system has paved the way for his extradition to the US, where he faces certain death. They have already dehumanized and reduced him to a suicidal, stroke-ridden, physical and mental wreck of a man. But they're not done with him yet. Speaking of kangaroo justice, not a word, not a peep out of the Australian government over this appalling persecution of its own citizen. They're all laser-focused on worrying about journalists in Hong Kong instead. Perhaps we should be flattered by all the love and attention. By the way, we also know now that the CIA actually plotted to assassinate Assange in London, even exploring the option of murdering him in a street shootout.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to put take myself off mute. It's interesting, that is, isn't it? What he's saying there about the assassination attempt, or the planning the assassination on him. They're doing that they did that 2 years ago, but then the reason that the extradition was overturned by the court was because primarily the United States had sent a diplomatic letter to the court, pinky swearing that they wouldn't put Julian Assange in SAMs, or special administration measures, pre-trial. That's it. They plotted to kill him 2 years prior. What, we're going to extradite him, are we? What do you think is going to happen in 2024 when they elect another president? What if Donald Trump comes back? Trump was the person who was, and Trump and was it Pompeo? It was under Trump that Pompeo was making all these sketches up, drawing these sketches up to kill him. What if they come back? The United States reneges on pretty much every deal, every diplomatic deal it does with every other country around the world. Why would we accept anything that they said about anything when it comes to this journalist who proved that they were war criminals?
Go democracy. I quote American journalist Chris Hedges. Julian Assange committed the empire's greatest sin. He exposed it as a criminal enterprise. He documented its lies, callous disregard for human life, rampant corruption, and innumerable war crimes. Republican or Democrat, conservative or Labour, Trump or Biden, it does not matter. The goons who oversee the empire sing from the same satanic songbook. Empires always kill those who inflict deep and serious wounds. End quote. Is there no limit to the insufferable hypocrisy of these gangsters in glass houses, these emperors who have no clothes? They defecate all over human rights and press freedom in the name of national security whenever it suits them, calling it justice. When some other country they don't like does anything of that sort, it's repression. How convenient. Here I quote another astute political commentator from the West, George Galloway. If Julian Assange were a Chinese journalist and publisher, he'd have the Nobel Prize be the centerpiece of Human Rights Day. If Chinese crimes rather than American crimes had been revealed by Assange, he would now be the poster boy for the Winter Olympics boycott campaign. End quote. What they're doing to this brave man who has done more for journalism than any of us is a travesty, an atrocity, an abomination. Until and unless they free Assange, the US, the UK and Australia, and any other nation in bed with this menage a trois of morally bankrupt Western powers, pardon my French, have no right to preach human rights and press freedom to the rest of us. Flush your own feces first before you lecture us on sanitation.
Flush your own feces first before you lecture us on sanitation. That's got to be my favourite quote of the year so far. We told them this was going to happen. I've been saying this, Assange supporters have been saying this for years. The longer this goes on, the longer we torture this journalist for publishing factual information about our crimes, the more other countries in the world, countries that we say are tyrannical and not democracies, can just point at us and go, well, you've got no moral standing whatsoever, have you? Your words are empty, aren't they? Your promises are meaningless, aren't they? Everything you say, it has no weight at all. How can we trust what you're saying is true while you're doing that? How can we trust that you are the democratic oasis that you say you are when the best journalist you've ever had, the West has ever seen certainly, is currently being tortured in your version of Guantanamo Bay, having broken no laws whatsoever in this country. I know when I say that, people go, oh, he jumped bail. Yeah, and he got 50 weeks. The maximum sentence he could possibly get in Belmarsh prison, where we put our terrorists and mass murderers. That's who's in the cells next to him. $50 weeks we give to you. The only people who get a 50-week sentence for bail are people who have jumped bail on a dozen different occasions. And even then, he should have been released after 25. But they kept him in prison for his full 50-week sentence. And he's been there in total now for 1,000 days. And 7 years before that in arbitrary detention. How can we have any moral standing in the world? How? We don't. Any publication, anytime the BBC point fingers over at China and Hong Kong, just laugh at them. Assange. Just say one word. Assange. I can't stress how important it is that that man is freed. The United States is seeking global jurisdiction over what is true, what the truth is, while lying about everything that they are doing. Everything. They know that they've been killing more civilians in Afghanistan and in these wars than they are letting on. This is their documentation that Julian was releasing. And by the way, documentation is still being released in that same way. New York Times did a piece not long ago about how innocent, murders, innocent, what they call collateral damage in other countries is being suppressed massively. Those journalists weren't sent to jail there. We can't have liars, proven liars, given complete control over what is true on this planet. Because if that's the case, if we do that, nothing we are told from this day forward, it's all going to be false, isn't it? Free Julian Assange, that's what I say. Right, I think we've gone enough for an hour and 45 minutes. I'm going to say hello to people in the chat, and then I'm going to log off. Thanks everybody for joining me. I hope me forgetting to unmute hasn't pissed you off too much. And I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back with more live streams soon. Thanks very much to everybody who support me. Please support independent media. Go to the website, find out ways you can do that. I'm not on Patreon and everything, but you can send me stuff for PayPal, Bitcoin, etc. I don't get any money from anywhere else. I rely totally on you. So, yeah, it's really good to be back doing this. And I wish you all a really happy 2022 and a happy new year. And I hope that this year is the year that Julian Assange is freed. I really do. Take care, everybody. I'll be back in a few days. The dog wants to say goodbye. Come on then. Doug, what's the matter? Come here then. Show everybody your ball. Come here. Show everybody your ball. Come on, up. That's her ball. That's the best toy in the world, apparently. Thanks, everybody. Free Julian Assange.